When you look at a country, Dr. Juma,
Right.
what key role has the religion really played in sort of strengthening our systems and sort of putting us to task to question our morals in the way that we run this country?
Let me tell you, some of the key deficiencies we're having are on character formation,
Yes.
on proper value systems, which actually are being void in our education system.
Yes.
Because our education as it stands currently has been focused on academia and skills for you to get a job and earn a living. And actually it has not focused much more on building a holistic person who can be taught on how to live a life
In general, yes.
and who actually understand his proper identity, because patriotism comes when we have a full awareness of who we are.
Nice.
And for us to be complete as who we are, as an husband, I mean, as a male, you have functions that defines you. As a female, there are functions that defines you.
Nice.
And these functions are way ahead of just being a doctor or just being an accountant to earn a living, or an engineer to earn a living. These titles that we're given to earn a living, actually those are not really the primary titles, functionality that we are supposed to function in, because absolutely our body, our features confirms we are specific persons, and you have roles. And within the society, what are your roles? What are your functions? And some of these things require specific ethical measures, which are mostly embedded in the spiritual or religious foundations. And actually, I refer to them as values, which Paul said that even if those who are not of the law live according to the law, they also attain the promises of the law. So if people are trained, male is trained over and above, or being an accountant, or being an engineer, or being a doctor, on their functionality, on how to be a father, on how to be a mother, on how to be an husband. There are certain moral tenets that one require for you to function optimally in such an institution. And to that effect, spirituality is, to me, imperative for any functioning society to be effective, or a society that wants to be second to none and progressive. It needs certain moral guidance. And actually our constitution borrows a lot from the spiritual foundations. It's just that it's been now secularized. And if you are to have a chapter 6 of our constitution, effective chapter 6 of our constitution, then you'll need just and righteous men.
Isn't it?
But the moment you have liberalism that allows Machiavellism, because that's where again we go back to compare thoughts and philosophies that are governing the world, because there's a 48 laws of power where you can put lies, PR, and then put fear and manipulate. But then again, back to the scriptures, you'll find on the wisdoms of Solomon, isn't it, which are way different from the Machiavellian's principles. And if you are entirely based on the Grecians' thought of Machiavellism, where things are relative and you can leave it to how you want to manipulate it without referring yourself to standards, even the universal laws, then we will have, those are the things that have led us to where we are now.
Yes.
And I know two governors who are my friends who have adopted a model of governance which they call theocratic governance. And that is former governor of Makwini, Professor Kibweza Kibwana, and I know also Nyong'o went back to study theology for the purposes of getting to know effective theological model of governance. And what they are euphemizing through theological model of governance, they are just trying to euphemize the pure spirituality, where you talk about love, where you talk about honesty, where you talk about truthfulness, where you talk about integrity.
Yes.
Because these virtues, those who have worked in them actually, or countries that have worked in them have really developed and progressed. But when you go back to the foundations of deceit, malice, treachery, because treachery begets treachery, deceit begets deceit.
Yes.
And then the worst of it is when that has become the norm, so the habit within the society. Because if their habit is about lies, promises, which are made blatantly in the daylight, yet somebody knows that I'm not going to do this.
That's it.
But I will tell you, yes, I promise you, the mutungi, not the gas.
Yeah.
It becomes a culture that is not desirable
Yes.
for a society that is desiring to progress.
If you look at the theme of today's prayers, I mean, the president is one man who's come in and said, well, any day that we're going to celebrate and made as a country, even the national holidays are going to have a theme. Today's theme is reconciliation. And if you look at what is going on in his government right now, you will say there are two sides that have essentially developed. There is the opposition side that is quite bitter, and you can say they're actually moving towards the point where they're saying, we haven't got anything. In fact, there have been silent talks of secession in the country. I mean, we had other people say that for a long time now, that is something that we need to bring to the fore.
Right.
Do you think that this is going to be the best moment for him to come in and announce or talk about the plans that men have for the opposition now? Because if it's going to be about reconciliation, when we look at what is in the doorstep or at the table for the president,
Yes.
it is a very, very bitter opposition.
Well,
do you think he's going to extend another olive branch today to them? Make another announcement and say probably because the talks that we've been having here, the bipartisan talks are failing. In fact, they're crashing. The opposition is saying we're going to back to the streets as well. Is this the best time for him to come in and make that grandiose announcement, if you may allow me to say that?
Well, for the good of the citizens, we'll be a bit optimistic, because I would have said more promises. And because when I refer to more promises, is that when you are reconciling the country, politically, Kenya is a multi-party democracy. Actually, Kenya is not a bi-party democracy. You know, sometimes these people reconcile with themselves and then they think they've reconciled the country. When you are referring to the political sphere, we have close to over 90 political parties with various different ideologies, the reasons to why they were registered. So if you narrow into one or two political parties and sit in a corner and think that now we have reconciled the society, I think these are the unbecomings which are violating the constitution. And the moment you are even violating the law or you're not law abiding, then definitely it become abusive to a spiritual foundation or platforms like this. Because one should be judged by their fruits and their actions. What have you delivered? What have been your foundations? Because in terms of the rule of law, how law-abiding are you? Kenya, as a multi-party democracy, require multi-party approach to national reconciliation or issues of national dialogue or issues of national discussions. It needs to take that face. Actually, I'm a party leader of Justice and Freedom Party.
Yes.
And I've not been invited to the prayer day. It's a private affair of the president and his cliques.
When you listen to what the Azimio Coalition said yesterday, they said, well, we'll not be attending. Seems like somebody extended that branch to them to attend the National Prayer Day today. Well,
because those have been their brothers in crime or partners in crime. When you talk about when you talk about hawking this country. But when I was campaigning, I was vying as a president.
Yes.
And if you listen to me, I categorize both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza as being forced to choose between a fox and a wolf who should eat us. Based on their principles and their ideologies and their history. Because these guys are one group or one club. And they can twist and turn us like a turncoat anytime they choose. And thanks to alternative foundational platforms that exist and parties like ours, Justice and Freedom Party, that we are able to enlighten citizens and showcase alternatives when people are always caught up in these PRs and these schemes of trying to make Kenya a nation of cliques, a nation of cronies, a nation of tribes, instead of a nation which is united in diversity, a nation of various values and serious potentials, a nation with a vision and national ethos, which actually has not been clear. Because if we were to be judging even the president's party or his government, we should be judging them based on their vision. What was their vision? What was their manifesto?
Yes.
They launched it publicly in Kenya, and then everybody, including the fourth estate, you know the content of their manifesto.
That's true. And
looking at their action, are they in line with their manifesto? If they're not in line in their manifesto, then we need to keep them accountable. Because whatever could have allowed us to give and take was probably the professional presentation of a manifesto. And knowing that somebody would implement some lucrative or beautiful looking pompous manifesto, you would hope that there would be a future. Only to see a dispensation that seems not to know where they are coming from or where they are going, which actually now justify the good book of where there's no vision, people cast off restraint. People are not able to focus clearly. People are not able to measure or keep the government accountable on clear premise that they promise. So as it stands, I would advise fellow leaders to be truthful, to be honest, to relate with the virtues, Solomonic virtues correctly, not just for the good of the land, but even for themselves. Because if you give love, you get love back. If you give honesty, you get honesty back. If you give care and respect, you get respect back. But when you act in anarchy, or in manners that are abusive to the tenets of the virtues, the human norms, then definitely you'll get that back.
When you listen to the kind of messaging that we get from